Okay, so we're going to graph y equals 3 cosine 2x minus pi plus 1. We can go ahead and identify the A, B, C, and D. So my A is 3, my B is 2, my C is negative pi, and my D is 1. First thing, step 1, I want to find the period. The period equation is 2 pi over the absolute value of b. So it's 2 pi divided by the absolute value of 2. So that's going to give me just pi. Okay. And then I want to take that period and divide it by 4. So the period is pi, dividing that by 4 is just going to give me pi over 4. So my one period from 0 to pi over 4, I'm going to divide that line segment or the angles up where I'm finding the max and min, the midline, into 4 parts. So I need to go from not 0 to pi over 4, 0 to the period, which is pi. And each segment length is going to be pi over 4. So if I start at 0 to get to the next point, I have to add pi over 4. So I have pi over 4 here. I have to add the next length of pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, I get 2 pi over 4. It's going to give me pi over 2. And I'm going to add pi over 4 to 2 pi over 4, I'm going to get 3 pi over 4. And if I add pi over 4 again, I would be at 4 pi over 4, but that reduces to just pi. All right. Step 3 is find the horizontal phase shift. The horizontal phase shift is negative c over the absolute value of b. So my negative c is going to be, where my c is negative pi, so it's going to be the negative of negative pi divided by the absolute value of b, which is 2, is going to be pi over 2. So that means every angle is going to shift. The angle 0 pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi is going to shift pi over 2 units. All right, so I'm going to actually do this on a number line. So 0 to pi, I had pi over 4 here, I had pi over 2 here, and I had 3 pi over 4. So since these angles are shifting because of the horizontal phase shift, and they're going to shift to the right, I'm going to add pi over 2 to the existing angles. So I'm going to have pi over 2. So create another number line. I'm going to have pi over 2. So instead of starting at 0, we're going to shift over pi over 2 units. And we're going to shift pi over 4. We added pi over 2. We're going to be shifting 3 pi over 4 units. We're going to shift pi units. And then we're going to shift 2 pi units. And we're going to shift 3 pi over 4, pi over 2 to 5 pi over 4. And then we're going to shift the last one, or the last angle, to 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2. So these are going to be my x values, or my angles. Okay, step 4, we're going to make a t-table and graph the function. All right, so I'm substituting pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, pi, 5 pi over 4, 3 pi over 2 in for the x in the equation y equals 3 cosine 2x minus pi plus 1. If I substitute pi over 2 for x, I'll have 3 cosine of 2 times pi over 2 minus pi plus 1. If I put that all into a calculator, I get 4. If I substitute 3 pi over 4 in for x, I'm getting 1 in my calculator. If I substitute pi for x, I'm getting negative 2. Substituting 5 pi over 4 for x, I get 1. And if I substitute 3 pi over 2, I get 4. All right, so a short t-table would be at pi over 2, my y value is going to be 4. At 3 pi over 4, my y value is going to be 1. At pi, my y value is negative 2. At 5 pi over 4, my y value is going to be 1. And at 3 pi over 2, my y value is going to be 4. All right, so I'm going to graph this. That's step 5. All right, so we're going to graph. So at pi over 2, my y value is 4. At 3 pi over 4, my y value is 1. At pi, my y value is negative 2. At 5 pi over 4, I'm at negative 1. I mean positive 1, not negative 1. And at 3 pi over 2, I'm at 4. Okay, so my graph looks something like this. Okay, and that is one period of the graph of that function.